Uh-oh, we got a moron here.
Presenting the distinguished international news commentator and foreign correspondent,
Smaulgld. This has been an extraordinary week in world affairs.
Now I told Hillary Clinton that that's moronic.
Hello and welcome to Smaulgld's Moronica for the week ended April 14th, 2018. The week's news that made you scratch your head, cringe, or just say, that's moronic. This just in, Justin Trudeau. Uh-oh, we got a moron here. Hoping to bury the Indian debacle, Justin Trudeau heads to Peru to talk trade and migration. Remember, he had been featured dressed in Indian garb and making what he thought were traditional Indian gestures, making a complete jackass of himself on his last international trip. He hopes to do a little better in Peru. China says Trudeau's, quote, progressive agenda has no place in free trade pact. China's ambassador says his country firmly rejects Canada's attempt to entrench labor standards in a free trade pact. Now we just wonder here, will Trudeau meet Chinese officials dressed as Sun Tzu? Well, speaking of travel, that's it. This country's racist. I'm out of here. So says. Now, what type of person might say something like that? Oh, a liberal Hollywood star. She might leave the country over racism under Trump. Always with the threats, never with the action. I have not one of these people who goes around saying, America, love it or leave it. You can stay, you can bitch and complain, but if you threaten to leave and you don't leave, I think you should leave. Now, how to stop global warming? Here's a unique way. Uh-oh, Los Angeles painting city streets white in bid to combat climate change. Now, I think this is a bit of Fox News rubbing it in. Actually, I think what they're doing here, the streets do get hot. And if they paint them white, it does reflect the heat. But I don't think it has anything to do with climate change. Knife control. London had a bloody February. Hit a murder rate worse than New York City, and yet guns are banned in London. Many of you remember the book or the movie, A Clockwork Orange, written in the 60s, I believe. There was a movie, perhaps late 60s, early 70s, and it was a futuristic novel, and they were concerned that the London gangs would run the streets and they'd have a severe issue in solving their crime problem. However, in that book and in that movie, they had come up with a very clever way, was they would make the youth criminals have a physical aversion to actually committing violent crime. Well, now we're fast forward to the period of time that they were probably thinking about 50 years on, and London is in the grips of a crime wave. But they're not looking to stop that crime through attacking the criminals and making sure they don't commit crimes. Nope. They're going to, as we saw last week, they have a movie out that shows kids talking about why they want to be around and why they're not going to get involved with knives. Well, the mayor's gone one step further, and he is now going to have $110 million in Metropolitan Police to step up patrols and basically stop and search people to make sure that they don't have knives. Now, this is the same mayor who also, I believe, invested in 900 police officers to track down hate speech online. If you say something, or you see something, or you say something, you got to turn them into the Metropolitan Police. And if someone's getting stabbed next to you, never mind. If there's hate going on the internet, report that to the Metropolitan Police, and we'll just make sure that the mayor has enough people on the street stopping and searching people for knives. Now, this is a very serious, this is not just a one-off Moronica. This is organized Moronica. Here is Peter Whittle. I don't know what he is. He must be a politico in London. He's attending the hastily arranged knife crime summit. Have a summit now. He's at the knife crime summit at City Hall, isn't he? He's the mayor, the Home Secretary, etc., etc. They're putting the top minds together to end knife crime. Okay. Well, there they are. They're going to figure it all out. Confederacy of dunces. Well, it's not just enough to have the politicians involved. Top doctor We've got to ban deadly knives from our kitchens. Yes, that is what the problem is in the UK. Hate speech and kitchen knives. Uh-oh. Well, here we go. If you can't win them over by stopping them and frisking them, and with movies with kids in them, you got to win their hearts and mind with the Cookie Monster. Only cowards carry knives. Well, there you go. That's going to convince a criminal, isn't it? And that's all the way up in, that's North London, or the suburbs of North London, in Essex. The Essex police now have a knife bin. So if you're walking along and you realize that you might be a coward because you're carrying a knife, just drop it off in the bin and off you go then. And the person there, I think, wrote, what did they write? It's very nice. London has fallen. Indeed, it has. Now, here's also in London. This is Trafalgar Square, right in the center of town. This thug here blindsided this guy, punched him, knocked him down, killed him with one punch. And I guess it won't be long until we have, according to Marvis Sarcasticus, a hand-free zone. The government is kindly asking you to have your hands surgically removed by May 1st. And those not in compliance with the law will feel the full force of the law bearing down on them. He may have said that in jest, but who knows? Here's another example of how far England or London has fallen. Let's take a look here. Now, this guy here is a police officer, and he was going to arrest. There he is. He's arresting a suspect. No, the suspect is arresting him. There you go. Face down. Get the cuffs on him there, just like you see in the movies. All right, then. He's all done. Off you go. As long as he didn't call him a name, I'm sure he's fine then. Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse. London. Here we go. I don't know who this is, but this is the Independent, another English paper. Well, if you really want to stop youth violence on the streets of London, we can start by getting rid of the word gang. Yeah, that's gonna do it. Just don't call hoodlums and people that hang around in groups that do bad things and commit crimes gangs. If you just stop calling them that, well, youth violence goes away. London has indeed fallen. Well, no, it gets further. Now they're trying to solve a drug problem, cannabis problem. Well, if you legalize cannabis, that could help end London gang violence. Now, says Vince Cable. Vince Cable didn't get the message. There is no such thing as gang violence. Vince, old boy, you're part of the problem, calling it gang violence. I please hope that you don't call cannabis the chronic. Maybe you'd be in big trouble then. Then you'd cause even more drug abuse. Diamond and silk. They are now deemed unsafe for the community. That's right. Now, Diamond and Silk, I don't know if you're familiar with them. They are two young ladies who are Donald Trump fans, and they have been pretty much banned from the YouTube, not the YouTube, but the Facebook community. Now, they're not dangerous at all. They are just, what they call themselves is two chicks down with politics. And really, their whole shtick is basically, one of them says, I love Donald Trump. The other one says, And the other one says, he gonna make America great again. That's right. He gonna build a wall. And that's basically it. That's not dangerous. That's funny to a certain demographic who likes to watch them talk about Donald Trump and say he's gonna make America great again. He's gonna build the wall. Well, these poor women here, they have been basically shadow banned on Facebook. Hey, y'all, if you don't believe that censorship on Facebook exists, take a look. This post has been up for nearly an hour and a half and reached only 5 people out of their 1.5 million followers. That's right. They are getting banned simply for being conservative. They're just two chicks that is down with politics. That's right. Now, Chick-fil-A. This one is very offensive. Now, Chick-fil-A, I've never been there. It supposedly is Christian-owned. Well, the New Yorker wrote an article. Remember, liberals love to talk about diversity in the community. And the more diversity, the better, as long as it is diversity that they approve of. Well, this Chick-fil-A apparently opened up a store in somewhere in Manhattan. And the New Yorker says, Chick-fil-A's arrival in New York City feels like an infiltration in no small part because of its pervasive Christian traditionalism. Now, imagine if they just substitute Christian for any other religion. That would have been a wonderful addition to the community. But they don't like diversity if it's Christian or traditional. Access Hollywood and Russian collusion. Now, we covered this the other day on the Mueller raid on Trump's attorney. Now, this is moronic, but it's actually quite frightening. However, you normally see these raids on drug dealers, violent criminals, to prevent an outbreak of some massive crime against the community or the world. You actually get the warrant, you go in and raid, and you save the day and you end the danger. This guy, Michael Cohen, has been cooperating with the Department of Justice and has been turning over documents, but they felt they needed to do one of these raids on his home and so on. And then it turns out they're looking for the Access Hollywood tape. Now, if you think about what they're doing here, you're looking for Stormy Daniels. I don't know. They're looking for naked pictures. Clancy, take the boys and surround the house. There's naked pictures in there. Take them down, boys. That's from Bugs Bunny, if you remember. This is kind of ridiculous that they're actually going to these lengths to take down, and it has to be aimed at Trump, even though this had to be aimed at Michael Cohen directly. But of course, he would not have had this raid occur unless it was part and parcel of this witch hunt on Donald Trump. Now, we're going to skip over this one here, but let's go into James Comey. Now, the problem with James Comey, as we're going to see, he's written a kiss and tell book. It really is unbecoming of a former FBI director. He's got time on his hands. He's trying to make some money. And then he tries to say that meeting with Donald Trump was like meeting with a mafia boss. The demand of loyalty was like Sammy the Bull's Cosa Nostra induction ceremony. Come on. First of all he wanted to know, from what I understand, was Comey was the one who went to Donald Trump almost on a shakedown and basically told him, you know, there's this stuff out there. There's some people, you know, they're talking about you and Russian prostitutes and golden showers. And Trump is concerned. He's like, what's this all about? And Comey doesn't tell him that it's part and parcel of supposed intelligence that he has gotten and has gathered from the Clinton campaign, who got it from a British spy working with Russians that he used to get a FISA warrant on Trump. And here he is acting like, who's your buddy? I'm just telling you this stuff is out there. Don't worry about it. And then he has the nerve to say that Trump is acting like some type of mafioso. Pot calling the kettle black there. Al Gore, what does he have to say? You know, again, this hyperbole that somehow Trump being president is the worst thing that can happen in American history. Other than, of course, the polar caps melting by 2015, I would bet on American democracy surviving this bleak period for sure. But the challenge is stiffer than any we've faced in my lifetime. Al. Now, Justin Trudeau's cousin, Emmanuel Macron, over in France. Well, here he is, the President of France. He tells Mohammed bin Salman today, you are the embodiment of the French Revolution. Now, look at him. Does he look like the embodiment of the French Revolution? Uh-oh. Now, here's what I'm talking about with Donald Trump and Comey and Brennan and all the other so-called distinguished members of the intelligence community. What they don't realize in getting into these battles with Trump, they can lose their so-called and their dignity. They have created this aura around them and cultivated this concept that they are respected members of the political establishment. Well, Trump is a pro-troll. His reputation isn't going to increase or decrease in battling the way he does. These distinguished CIA and FBI directors are going to have their reputations sullied by engaging in spats with Trump. And they're going to get their clocks cleaned because they don't know how to do it. Donald Trump called Comey a slime ball in one of his tweets. In this tweet here, it says, DOJ just issued the McCabe report. The DOJ didn't just issue a McCabe report. The Inspector General, I guess working for the Department of Justice, issued a report on the McCabe firing, which is a total disaster. Everything that is a disaster. NAFTA is a disaster. The Obama economy is a disaster. Then he says, he lied, all caps. McCabe was totally controlled by Comey. McCabe is Comey. Comey is McCabe. No collusion, all made up by this den of thieves and low lives. Now, there's no way that Comey's going to be able to match that in one of his tweets or even in his book. He just doesn't have that talent, if you can call that a talent. He doesn't know how to brawl that way. But here's Comey, and again, he's supposed to be the distinguished FBI director. I honestly never thought these words would come out of my mouth, but I don't know whether the current president of the United States was with prostitutes peeing on each other in Moscow in 2013. It's possible, but I don't know. Well, that's your job to find out. You're the head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the public wants to know. If you don't know, how are we going to find out if Russian prostitutes were peeing on Donald Trump? Now, here's Brennan. Here's the former CIA director. He decides he's going to mix it up on Twitter, too. What does he have to say? Brennan, former director of the CIA, your kakistocracy is collapsing after a lamentable journey. See, when you're going to troll, you don't have to show off your erudition. Once you start using big words, you've lost the troll crowd. You can't troll with big words, perspicacious. Those kind of words aren't going to work. As the greatest nation history has known, we have the opportunity to emerge from this nightmare stronger and more committed to ensuring a better life for all Americans. Then he gets into the trite, including those you have so tragically deceived. And this is in response to another classic Trump troll. James Comey is a proven leaker and liar. That's how you do it. You don't talk about a lamentable journey. Virtually everyone in Washington thought he should be fired for the terrible job he did until he was, in fact, fired. He leaked classified information for which he should be prosecuted. Now, that's possible that he does get prosecuted for his leaking. He lied to Congress, and under oath, he is weak, and then he continues on eventually. I think he calls him a slime ball. Uh-oh, Bernie Sanders vows to repeal tax cuts if the Democrats return to the Senate and control it. Now, he's thinking that the 1% got all the wealth, and they got some tax cuts, and he's going to get in there, and he's going to shut that down, and that's how he's going to get elected. Here's his statement. Over and over again, President Trump and his administration falsely claimed that the $1.5 trillion tax cut bill would pay for itself. Today's Congressional Budget Office report puts that myth to rest. According to the CBO, President Trump's massive tax break for the wealthy and large corporations is the primary reason that the federal deficit and the national debt will explode over the next decade. Republicans are already using the huge increase in the debt that they caused as an excuse to make major cuts in Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. This is unacceptable. At a time when massive wealth and income inequality, I love income inequality, we got to repeal all of President Trump's tax break for the wealthy and big corporations and rebuild the disappearing middle class. And he's going to do that by taking away your tax cut and taking away from the 1%, and somehow we're all going to be richer. No, that's not what he wants. He wants us all to be the same. And he can start by donating his 2 excess homes. Uh-oh. Now, here's a woman. Her name is Simone Sanders. Now, she is related to Mr. Bernie Sanders. She is a CNN political commentator and a former press secretary for Bernie Sanders, and she reportedly was detained at the airport, causing a fuss, causing a stir, and I think she was probably worried about the 1% getting the better seats on the plane, and she didn't like that. At any rate, they detained her. Burglar memorial trash. This should have been put up in the section of London Has Fallen. Now, there was a gentleman who lives in South London, pensioners, I think he is, late 60s, I believe, and two young men in their 30s decide they're going to break into his house with a screwdriver, and somehow the pensioner managed to wrest the screwdriver away from one of the burglars and managed to kill him with it, and the other guy took off. Well, the family of the deceased burglar decided that they thought that because he died there, they were going to put flowers and create a memorial around the pensioner's home. Now, as a result, the guy's afraid to go back to his home. He's not even staying there. And his neighbors and supporters are pulling down the memorial of flowers. And of course, the London police have decided to get involved, and they're trying to make sure that the flowers remain in respect of the deceased. Now, that is moronic. Now, here's senatorial stupidity. Bipartisan group of senators introduced legislation to protect Mueller. Uh-oh. Now, this is really moronic. If you go to Constitution 101, how does legislation become a law? Well, the senators, the congressmen, they produce the legislation, they write it up, they pass it, and then they send it to the president to sign it. Now, why would the president sign a bill that restricts his constitutional right to fire people in his department? Well, you could say if he doesn't sign it, then they can override his veto. He can just veto it, not sign it. And, well, then they might as well impeach him. Impeach him for what, though? Because they have to have a crime in order to impeach him. And besides, even if the bill somehow passed and they overrode his veto, it's unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court should basically say that the Senate doesn't have a right to limit the constitutional authority of the president just because they vote for it and they drafted legislation. So you see, what a waste of time Congress is, trying to pass a bill to protect the special counsel. All right. Now, that'd be like Trump signing an executive order preventing a senator from firing one of his aides. There's this thing called separation of powers, and if they want to get Trump, then they have to get him for a crime or misdemeanor, or they have to take control of the Senate. I mean, a lot of the Republicans are never Trumpers, too. They have to form coalitions. But stopping an investigation, and besides the investigation, who even knows what it's about and what has it produced so far? The biggest feather in their cap is they indicted a Russian internet troll farm that they'll never be able to prosecute because all the actors are back in Mother Russia. So now, Elon Musk, if you remember last week in Moronica, Elon Musk on April Fool's thought he was not only a clever and genius inventor and operator of a company, he thought he was also a comedian. And on April Fool's, he said, ha ha, Tesla's going bankrupt. And then he wrote like 6 tweets explaining why this is the biggest bankruptcy and we're so bankrupt, as if that's not a possibility, given that the company has only sold about 100,000 cars in 10 years and basically makes no money. Well, he's at it again, and here is the latest Elon Musk attempt at humor. So I guess The Economist wrote something about Tesla that he didn't like, and probably, I didn't read it, it was probably about the company's inability to turn a profit, and if they were good at their job, they probably would have talked about all of the government subsidies that they get, and then the conflicts of interest between Tesla and Solar City. Who knows what they said? But here's Elon Musk. The Economist used to be boring, but smart with a wicked dry wit. Now it's just boring. Sigh. Tesla will be profitable and cash flow positive in Q3 and 4, so obviously no need to raise money. Someone needs to tell old Elon that April Fool's is the day to make jokes, and even then. Here we go again. Bitcoin and the opioid crisis. Uh-oh. So here's CNBC pinning the opioid crisis, which has been around far longer than Bitcoin, is the Bitcoin high, how cryptocurrencies are fueling America's opioid crises. Now, we have had drug issues in the United States, drug issues worldwide. The issue is availability of drugs, lack of education. It's not Bitcoin. We have had in the United States a crack epidemic in the 1980s. We've had all types of drug scourges. The war on drugs started in the 1970s. Bitcoin wasn't around. It had nothing to do with Bitcoin. But that doesn't stop CNBC from trying to make it sound like, you know, if we just got rid of Bitcoin, then we wouldn't have an opioid crisis. Now that's moronic. Kamala Harris. Well, let's just do JP Morgan and Bitcoin because they were involved also in a little Bitcoin ironic. Now, Jamie Dimon made on a couple occasions big attacks on Bitcoin, calling it a fraud, saying he'd fire anyone involved with it. Well, JP Morgan, as you know, has had about $40 billion worth of fines levied against them for fraud, basically, to settle fraud charges. And they're still profitable, even after they pay $40 billion in fines over the last 7-8 years. But this time, the latest one was JP Morgan was sued over fees over cryptocurrency purchases. So what JP Morgan did, unbeknownst, or they didn't tell their customers, if their customers used their JP Morgan Chase, I guess it is, credit card, and they bought cryptocurrencies with them, they didn't charge them the normal fee. They charged them as if they were taking out a cash advance, and now they are being charged with fraud once again. Back to Kamala Harris. Now, she's a U.S. Senator. She'll probably run for president in 2020. And here's what she says. She's talking about, again, this is the whole thing of Russian collusion, and they've convinced everyone that Russia is the mortal enemy of the United States, mostly because they, quote, interfere in our democracy. And they do that by colluding mostly with Donald Trump and troll farms, creating memes. I think Maxine Waters said that Donald Trump got the idea to call Hillary Clinton Crooked Hillary. And if we find out that Putin told him that, then he's going to get impeached because that's collusion. So Trump and Putin would sit around and create memes in order to win the election, according to Maxine Waters. But Kamala Harris takes a more reasoned approach, and she says, regardless of what President Trump says, Russia interfered in our elections. First of all, he has said they interfered. There's literally no doubt, as opposed to there's no doubt. It's not a debatable point. Okay, now that you've shown how logical you are, well, if that's the case, then the United States should investigate not just the Trump campaign, but the Clinton, Sanders, and Stein campaigns as well, the Obama and Bush administrations, and we should really take a look at this. Russian deals involving uranium and so on. But that's not what she's interested in doing. It's obvious that the whole code for all this is somehow Trump is involved with the Russians, and the Russians never interfered with the elections before Trump was around. It's all about Trump. Well, she's not trying to be intelligent. She's trying to win political points here. Hogg Wild. Uh-oh. There's David Hogg. Now, David Hogg is going to take a gap year before college to work on the midterm elections. Now, Laura Ingraham got in trouble basically for not even mocking him, just saying, oh, he's not going to have a year off. She wasn't talking about a year off. She's saying he didn't get into college just because his grades weren't that good. And this gentleman here went nuts and said, oh, you got to ban Laura Ingraham. And then the stupid advertisers took their ads down from Laura Ingraham. Well, I don't have any advertisers that I'm worried about losing. So I actually could take a swipe at David Hogg indirectly. First of all, he's going to take a year off before college. Well, that's because he's not going to college because he didn't get in. Stop being snarky. That's a fact. Second point is he's going to work on the midterm elections. What's he going to do? Are politicians going to look for this guy's endorsement? Yeah, this is a good beep, beep. I think this guy has had his 15 days of fame, because you don't hear about him much anymore. And I think his cussing and swearing and know-it-all attitude is probably worn thin even on his supporters. I mean, I saw him on a couple of occasions. I can't even do it. He's cussing and swearing left and right. I mean, who wants the endorsement of this guy, or wants to say that he's representing you, or in the midterm elections when he's cussing and swearing about the AR-15s, where the hell he's going to be. He doesn't know what he's talking about, and yet he has been given this platform, where he was for 15 days, and told you can't criticize him, you can't argue with him, you just have to accept the fact that he rode his bike to the school, and therefore he knows everything about guns. And speaking of the wisdom of children, I hate when people use kids as political pawns, but here we go. Nicole Wallace. Now, she is a MSNBC woman, and here's what she has to say about her 6-year-old. My 6-year-old watching Morning Joe with me just said, "Morning Mika looks worried." I said, "She is." He said, "It's Donald Trump's fault, right?" Kids know Trump is in trouble. Why don't Republicans in Congress? Oh, my goodness. Your kid doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Morning Mika looks worried, and then from that she extrapolates, the kid understands that Trump is in trouble and Congress should know as much as my little 6-year-old. He just made that up. That is so ridiculous, and that is moronic. And that about does it for this week's In Moronica. Please join us tomorrow for Smaulgld, in case you missed it. Top gold, silver, and crypto stories for the week ended April 15. Please, if you enjoyed this, please donate to Smaulgld via PayPal, Bitcoin, or Litecoin, or please consider becoming, and actually do it, a Smaulgld patron. The links are all below this BitChute, this YouTube, and on the Smaulgld.com website. Thank you very much.